Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, quite unexpectedly, I like to discuss the latest post office scandal, which is that as a result of their chickens coming home to roost, they could easily end up going bust. The sting in the tail here is, of course, the post office is state owned, so we don't want it to go bust. So that's going to make things messy if we still want a post office at the end of this. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So my favourite tax lawyer, Dan Needle, has been explaining the latest headache for the post office and generally the government. The Financial Times was reporting on Friday that the post office faces a £100 million tax bill, as well as potentially a hefty penalty on top, which could make them insolvent. And this stems from a detailed look at the post office accounts in which it transpired that the post office included its Horizon scandal-based compensation payments in its tax deductible column of their accounts. Now, as Needle points out, you get a tax deduction if payments are made wholly and exclusively for the purposes of trade. However, he goes on to say that falsely accusing over 4,000 postmasters of theft was not only unlawful, but clearly not part of the post office's bona fide trade. As a result, the compensation payments they made were not real business expenses and not tax deductible. The long and the short of it is this: as a result of claiming tax deductions on these payments, they would have to pay the tax they should have been paying in those years in which they claimed tax deductions on compensation payments, but also another charge as well, because it's not going to be seriously believed that this was just a genuine mistake, could happen to anyone. It will be seen, I would see it as a deliberate attempt to evade taxes, but at the very least a careless attempt. That means a penalty would apply. Needle seems to think this evasion is egregious enough to warrant up to a 30% penalty for careless behaviour. Now, just a reminder, just as a similar thing that was reported last year, when Nadim Zahawi was being investigated by HMRC, and he ended up with a penalty on that. And he tried to claim, it was just a genuine mistake. It's like, no, if you're given a penalty, it's not deemed a genuine mistake. It's just that because it was on the lower end, it was deemed a careless error. In other words, something you shouldn't have done, you should have known better, but they accept that there's no proof he deliberately attempted to evade taxes. Now, Needle's view is the same here. It's very likely to come down to gross incompetence, and a level of incompetence that should not be expected of an organisation the size of the post offices, who will have its own dedicated accountants, right? I don't get how a large organisation with that dedicated accountancy team could possibly get something this wrong, this badly wrong. But that's his assessment. And it may well be the HMRC's assessment as well. So the post office, which is currently being investigated, could find itself with a roughly maybe £130 million tax bill, and it will not have the money to pay it. Also makes you wonder how many other large organisations might be doing something like this, whether carelessly or deliberately. After all, the post office got away with it for years. Years. It may even be that whoever first suggested and agreed to carry out this false accountancy will not face personal investigation. And what about everyone else? Like everyone within the post office's legal and accounting departments, there must have been some people who knew this and looked at it and went, that's a bit funny, isn't it? If there isn't a serious investigation, then what is the lesson this sends to those who will be carelessly fiddling their taxes as well? That you'll get away with it if you don't get caught, and if you do get caught, well, you won't go to prison. That prison is only for poor people who get caught out to the measure of a few £1,000s, not those who fiddle £100 million. But we don't know. Maybe there will be serious investigations, and maybe there will be criminal investigations and prosecutions to send a message. Indeed, I would certainly hope that Labour would push for such a thing, even if the Tories don't, in government. Because apart from anything else, like Labour have got spending plans and a promise not to break certain fiscal rules. Now, the easiest way of being able to invest more without putting up taxes or increasing borrowing is to make sure that people dodge taxes. We know that there's a hell of a lot of tax evasion and tax avoidance that the government could clamp down on. Especially when you're talking about like tax fiddling on this scale. But Needle also thinks there might be other tax holes in the post office accounts as well. In fact, he cites 4 possibilities. First, the shortfalls recovered from the postmasters. So The post office said to a load of postmasters, your accounts are short by whatever, £20,000 or something like that. Many of these postmasters had to then cough up that money. And the post office would have put it down as returned money from, theft. So it's just money returned to them. But in reality, it wasn't money returned to them because they didn't have money stolen. So it was basically, as Needle describes it, a windfall for which taxes should have been paid on it. But will they have paid taxes on those monies? Second, they may have put the costs of fighting what they knew to be false prosecutions as business expenses. They were obviously paying a lot in legal fees to prosecute these postmasters. They knew they were prosecuting them falsely, or that there was a very, very high probability they were prosecuting them falsely. If they've put those down as business expenses, they're not, because they knew they were false prosecutions. So it's not, again, part of their bona fide business. So that means that might be more taxes than we're getting away with. Third, claiming tax deductions for the legal fees incurred from fighting the postmaster's claim. So they've convicted these postmasters. The postmasters are taking them to court, and they're then using more legal fees when they know they are in the wrong. Again, given that the post office knew that these convictions were false, or almost all false, they should not have been deducting tax from these payments either. And fourth, the post office has had funds from the government which may be taxable and they may not have put down in the right column. And there's another important point that Needle makes. So post office executives, some of whom obviously knew they were breaking the law, maybe all of them, I don't know, but at least some post office executives who knew they were breaking the law and destroying the lives of innocent people, were being paid hefty bonuses based on a level of profitability for the post office which did not exist. Their profits had been artificially and unlawfully scaled up due to the influx of money stolen from postmasters, which they claim is just money returned, taxes avoided on costs which were not bona fide operating costs. So these bonuses were wrong as well. And for the executives who knew what was happening, surely that must be considered a form of theft too. So all looking very bad for the post office. If it were a rotten private company providing a service that could be provided by others or worth taking into public control, that would be one thing. But the messy part is the post office is like state controlled. It's not been privatised. It's one of the few things the state actually controls. So in a sense, it doesn't matter what HMRC decides to charge the post office. Whatever it is will represent money going from one public organisation to another. Robbing Peter to pay Paul, as they say. The government can't just let the post office collapse. We need them. So the Treasury will just have to move the money around. We're not going to find the tax coffers swelled by over £100 million because the post office doesn't have that money anyway. This is why it's extra important that action is taken against the individuals responsible. If it was down to incompetence, then some professional standards need to be levied against them. Is there an equivalent of being struck off for accountants? The executives who extracted larger bonuses from this false accounting, they need to be paying that back and investigated to find out what they knew. Those who knew what was going on need to be held to account in a criminal court. After all, when they were claiming sub-postmasters of stealing from them, they insisted the money was repaid in full and that they went to prison. Well, we should absolutely demand the same from them. It would be an absolute outrage if this ends up being a headache for the Treasury to work out how the government effectively finds itself and make the figures add up. Because that's what HMRC, landing the post office with a tax bill and fines, amounts to. It has to do it. You can't let an organisation off just because it's a public organisation. But it's the public purse finding itself. It's like punishing yourself. Oh, I committed a misdeed. I ate a biscuit when I shouldn't have done. I'm going to fine myself £20, take it out of my wallet there and put it back in the wallet. This debacle was down to a combination of incompetent and greedy individuals. And it's those individuals who have to be brought to account. Not trying to use this scandal as a political football to blame politicians of various stripes when they were all lied to. Trying to put politicians in the frame when there's absolutely zero evidence any of them knew what was going on, out of a sense of tribal bloodlust. All that does is shift the spotlight away from those responsible. And what happens when you blame the wrong people for something and let off the people who are actually responsible? It happens again and again. So if anyone really cares about the victims of this scandal, what they should be wanting is not just belated justice for those victims. They should be saying, we want to stop it happening to more victims. And to do that, you have to make the people behind it responsible. And you have to make it clear to anyone else who might be behaving carelessly that they are going to be investigated, they won't get away with it. And when they are caught, they are going to face a very severe penalty. Now, I've written to my MP to ask them what they intend to do to call those who are really responsible for these misdeeds to be investigated, rather than wasting time trying to use the issue as a party political football. And I would urge others to do the same. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.